All right, well, we're going to continue with our Youth Month discussions looking at young people in various fields. And tonight we focus on those who've been excelling academically. Many of them have had to overcome multiple barriers in order to get where they are. And we know that the numbers can also be quite devastating in terms of young people who would be able to access education, especially given the total number of unemployed young people and those who simply can't afford to be in institutions of higher learning. Joining us now, Dr. Marko Zvečević, who of course is a postdoctoral research fellow at the University of Johannesburg, and also being a part of this conversation, Nelisiwe Dlamini, and she's a researcher at the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, the CSIR. Good evening to both of you, and thank you so much for joining us. Perhaps let me just begin and give you an opportunity to tell us your individual stories. And, part of why we're having this conversation with you is because you've both managed to excel so well at the things that you're doing at such a young age. Nelisiwe, let me begin with you.
Good evening. Thank you for having me, and good evening to everyone. Well, with my story, basically how I started, you would actually be surprised that research chose me. It was not a career that I was looking into when I was still in high school or primary school. But as when you're in high school, mostly you're just concerned about, am I actually going to do well? I did maths and physical science. Those were my main subjects. Did economics and accounting. So one of the things that I focused on there was, am I going to do well? I have to do well because obviously I have to be accepted at the university. But I didn't know what exactly I want to do at the university. But when I got there, though, computer science was one of the things that I had applied for. And when I got accepted, I was ecstatic. So I started with that, and things went very well. I started to like it, but then it was more in the development space, not really exposed to a lot of research. But I got exposed to research when I actually joined the CSIR, when they sponsored my studentship to actually continue with my studies to do my master's in computer science. That's when I fell in love with research, and then my journey continued from there.
Sure.
And that's how I...
And in a moment, we'll get into how exactly you ended up at the CSIR. Dr. Marko, I want to come back to you. You're the youngest postdoctoral research fellow who's got a PhD in law at the University of Pretoria. Tell us a little bit about your journey and ending up where you are today.
Yes, thank you for having me this evening. Much like Nelisiwe, I too always saw myself in science, especially in high school, and that's why I also had physical science, biology, and so on. And when I got to varsity, my first choice was actually a BSc in genetics. So law was actually a second choice. I did get feedback in the law before the genetics in terms of admissions, and I decided to take it there onward. So I did the BA law degree for 3 years, and thereafter I did the postgraduate LLB. And as well, in your final year of the LLB, it's the first time that you engage really with research, and that's where you do your mini dissertation for one of the modules. And it was the first time that I was also exposed to research, where you go out and you find a topic and you research that topic. And after doing that module, I eventually decided to go for a master's. And the following year, after I'd completed the LLB, I went and applied for a master's at UP as well. And I got in for it. And that's when I first started engaging with, on quite an advanced level in terms of research, of course, all the way through to the doctorate since last year as well.
I want to speak to you a little bit about your schooling career because, of course, your parents immigrated from elsewhere and came to South Africa. Did that make it difficult for you to be able to, number one, be at a school where the main medium of instruction was Afrikaans? How did you manage to overcome those hurdles and still do so well in your academics?
Yes, I think for the primary school, it was an English school, so the language, there wasn't such a language barrier in primary school. Of course, English isn't my home language, but I mean, from primary school and high school, you learn the language and you get to be fluent in it. High school was a bit more of a challenge though, because it was a dual medium school. Now, we were separated in English and Afrikaans classes, so you did attend class in English, but when I first started out at the school, generally speaking, it was Afrikaans dominated, like, the assemblies and the weekly newsletters from the high school and so on. It is a challenge, especially because that barrier definitely exists, but I think it also, at the end of the day, I walked into the high school not being able to speak a single word of Afrikaans. And I walked out of the school, being able to hold somewhat of a conversation in Afrikaans. And then in terms of university, I think the challenge wasn't that big at university because all my schooling at university was in English, so there was no language barrier, so to speak, at varsity.
Sure. Nelisiwe, let me bring you back into the conversation. For many young people who do go through and access some form of higher education, they're always worried about whether or not they will get access to opportunity, especially in the marketplace. And you're working at an institution that really has incredible academic knowledge, has incredible experts. How easy was it for you to get a step in the door?
Well, it wasn't very easy for me to get a step in the door, because soon after varsity, it was more of, okay, I'm done studying right now. At that time, all I had was my honors degree. And I thought, okay, so what do I do now? And surprisingly enough, at that time, they were looking for somebody who is going to do their master's. So I applied, and then I was able to get in. But then it's only through looking and searching for such opportunities and having people who will actually tell you about these opportunities, that is what opened the door for me. So
sure.
I guess that.
And what are the kind of projects that you like to get involved in terms of your research? Where's your focus now?
Right now, we actually, the project that we're working on, I think the one that has been talked about since we also did the media briefing, etc., was the one where we looked at combating fake news during this time. And another one that is actually of great interest is the one where we want to track skills, of a learner from, say, primary school, high school, through to varsity, even the skills that they gain in a university or in a workplace setting, and actually being able to put all of those skills and knowledge in one area so that whenever somebody is looking for a certain candidate to employ, they can actually get that information in one place, instead of actually going to your university certificate and getting your marks there. They can actually get other skills that you have, maybe that you gained in high school, and for me, it's interesting a lot, and it's an exciting project because it's new and it's unique, and we're actually solving a problem where when you only have a certificate, for example, that a person has, it doesn't tell you a lot of details, about them. But then now, if you have all of this information that is poured in one area, it actually gives you a lot. It's quite a big project. So,
and it certainly creates more opportunity for this person then to be able to get a potential job. We certainly wish you all of the best with that. Dr. Marco, let me bring you in and perhaps talk about some of your research interests currently and things that you're working on.
Yes, thank you. So currently I am a postdoctoral research fellow at the University of Johannesburg. It's specifically under the research chair in international law. And the research that I'm currently focusing on primarily deals with the use of force in international law. Now, that stretches from work of the Security Council all the way through to self-defense. And there are other parts of the field I'm also involved in. It includes, some human rights elements, and as well as perhaps the domestic implementation of international law in South Africa. At the moment, I have some projects working on that. And I am currently also working on the focus of the research is as well in terms of the African Union's security architecture system, including SADC as well and ECOWAS. So there is always a refined focus on the African regional and sub-regional aspects of international law and international security. And at the moment, I'm currently working on a book which consolidates all the treaties and sub-regional documents and texts with regard to peace and security on the African continent.